Guys, so we're back with Ban This Book, and our lovely Miss Amy Ann Ollinger, had just gone to the board meeting, and she was so scared she couldn't stand up and speak her mind. So let's see what happens. Mixed Up Miss Frankfurter. In the car on the way home, I pulled the piece of paper out of my pocket and unfolded it. At the top, I had written, "Why from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller is my favorite book." What I had written below that wasn't long, but it had taken me a long time to do it. How do you say, why do you like a thing? You can point out all the good parts that you like, how they ran away from home to a museum, that you like how Claudia packed her clothes in an empty violin case, that they slept in a big antique bed and took baths in the fountain, that they solve a mystery about an old statue. I like all that stuff about from the Mixed Up Files, but none of those is really the reason I have read it 13 times and still want to read it again. That's something bigger, deeper, more than all those things added together. How do you explain to someone else why a thing matters to you if it doesn't matter to them? How can you put it into words how a book slips inside of you and becomes part of you, so much that your life feels empty without it? Is that your speech? Dad asked. Why didn't you read it? Dang it, Amy Ann. I thought that was the whole reason we came all this way here tonight. The whole reason we rearranged everybody's schedule. Your mother and I have a lot better things to do with our time. Hot tears poured down my cheek, and I turned away so Dad couldn't see. I tried to swallow a quiet sob, but Dad heard me. Are you crying? Oh, Amy Ann. Dang it, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I know how hard it is for you to speak up. He pulled a bright red bandana out of his pocket and handed it to me. Here, what's the book? I shook my head. I couldn't look at him. I was still crying. Come on, Mixed Up Miss Frankfurter or something? He was trying to get me to laugh, but I was too upset. He was right. Everybody had changed their plans for me, and we'd come all that way downtown to a school night, and I had sat there too afraid to say something. Dad didn't say anything else, but a few minutes later we pulled into the parking lot of the bookstore. I hadn't even noticed weren't driving home. Come on, Dad said. Clean yourself up now and let's see if they have your book. Inside, I told the lady at the register the name of the book, and she knew right away. A few minutes later, Dad bought me my very own copy of From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller. There you go, Dad said. Now it doesn't matter whether they have a copy in the library or not. You've got one of your own. On the way home, I held the book in both hands in my lap. The cover was a little different from the one in the library, and the Newbery medal on the front wasn't real like the library one. It was just a picture of the medal, not a sticker you would run your fingers over and feel the bumps, even through the clear plastic cover. But that didn't matter really. The book and the pictures inside were the same. And I was glad to have my own copy, but I couldn't help thinking about the book that wasn't on the library shelves anymore and how I would never have known From the Mixed Up Files of Miss Basil E. Frankweller was my favorite book if I hadn't found it there in the first place. The Girl with the Mullet. Sometimes I like to pretend I'm the main character in a book. My mom and dad and sisters and Rebecca are all characters too, and Mrs. Jones maybe, and Mr. Vaughn, my teacher, and the other kids in my class. But I'm the main character. I'm the one who explains everything that's happening in my own voice, the one things are happening too. The only problem is the best books aren't the ones where stuff just happens to the main character. The best books are the ones where the main character does something. Like run away to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And that's why I can never really be the main character in a book. I never do anything. I stuck my bookmark in From the Mixed Up Files right at the point where Claudia and Jamie collect $2.87 in coins from the restaurant fountain in the museum and watched out the window of the bus as it took me to school. I'd already read all the way through my new copy of From the Mixed Up Files once already, before I went to bed. We stopped at Rebecca's house and she flopped down on the seat next to me. "How was the school board meeting?" she asked. I shrugged. "You would have liked it. They said make a motion, and I second that a lot." "Robert's Rules of Order," Rebecca said. "That's what they're called. It was written by Robert somebody or other." No kidding, I thought, but I didn't say so. "Did you read the thing you wrote?" Rebecca asked. I looked out the window. No. "Amy Ann, you worked all week on that." I shrugged. "Mrs. Jones talked, though, right? What happened?" "Nothing. All the books are still banned." Rebecca saw the book in my hand. "Isn't that one of them?" "Yeah, my dad bought it for me." Rebecca took the book from me and looked at the cover. "You're all the time talking about what a great book this is. What's so bad about it?" "Nothing," I told her. "That lady said it teaches kids to lie and steal and cheat. But they don't do any of that stuff." Only now that I thought about it. They do lie. About running away to the museum. And Jamie does cheat at cards. And I guess you could call it stealing when they take the coins from the fountain. "Well, they kinda do, I guess," I said. Rebecca's eyes lit up. "Cool! Can I read it?" I was surprised. All the times I talked about from the mixed up files, Rebecca had never once been interested in reading it, until now. "Okay," I said. I pulled my bookmark out and gave it to her. "Only don't lose it." Rebecca looked pleased with herself. She started flipping through it to look at all the pictures. I grabbed the book and closed it. "Don't look ahead, you'll spoil it." Danny Purcell leaned over the back of the seat. "Hey, are you guys talking about the books Trey's mom got banned?" Rebecca blushed the way ladies do around my dad. She liked Danny, only she never said so. But sometimes when I was talking to her in class and I realized she wasn't listening, it was always because she was watching Danny. I didn't get it. Danny was nice and he was good at sports in gym class, but all he really seemed to care about was his hair. He had a big football helmet of hair that he wore down to his eyes like the frosting on a cupcake, and he was all the time combing it down with his fingers to make sure it was swirling the right way. "I saw the list in the newspaper," Danny said. "You read the newspaper?" I thought, but I didn't say. I read the list," Danny said, "and I realized I know one of those books, like not from class. It took me a while, but then I remembered why. We own one of them. It's on the bookshelf in my house. It's been there like forever." I perked up. "Which one?" Danny threw his head back to flick his hair into place. "Something about waiting for a girl. I don't remember. But the cover has this girl with a mullet talking to a ghost." "What's a mullet?" I asked. "It's when your hair is short in the front and the sides, but long in the back," Danny explained, the hair expert. "Girls don't wear mullets," Rebecca said. "Well, this one does." I tried to remember the other book on the list. "Is it Wait Till Helen Comes?" "That's it! Mom said it was like her favorite book when she was a kid. Man, I hope she never had a mullet. That is not a good look." Wait Till Helen Comes was one of the books on the list I hadn't read. "Can I borrow it?" I asked. Rebecca and Danny both looked at me surprised. Sure, yeah," Danny said. "I'll bring it tomorrow." Rebecca looked lasers at me, like I was interested in Danny too. "I just want to read the book," I told her. "I want to read it too," she told Danny. I squinted at her. Did she really want to read it, or was she just saying that because of Danny? Danny shrugged. "Okay, sure, I'll bring it tomorrow." "You can read it after me," I told Rebecca. "You've got From the Mixed Up Files from Miss Basil E. Frankweller to read first." "Why do you guys care so much?" Danny asked. "Are these books really good or something?" "They have to be," Rebecca told him. "Why else do you think they banned them?" It took a few seconds, but the truth of that finally got through Danny's thick helmet of hair. He nodded. Yeah, I bet they're full of good stuff. Like all those channels my parents block on TV." You can borrow this one when I'm finished with it, Rebecca said, waving from the mixed up files under his nose. Now it was my turn to shoot lasers from my eyes. Who said she could loan my books out to other people? All right, cool, Danny said, and he sat back in his seat. I lifted my hands at Rebecca as if to say, what gives? But she just blushed again. Whatever. At least now I could be sure she would actually read it. The bus pulled up to the school and I hauled my backpack into the aisle. That's when I saw who'd been sitting in the seat in front of us. Trey. He must have gotten on while I wasn't watching. How long had he been sitting there? Had he heard us talking about his mom and the banned books? Had he heard me loaning mine out and asking to borrow Danny's? Trey flipped a sketch pad closed, but put it in his backpack and slid out past me. He gave me a quick look as he went by, but he didn't say a word. What was that supposed to mean? That he had heard us? Was he going to rat us out to his mom? Danny nudged me along, and I followed Trey off the bus. I was being stupid. So what if we're reading the books? Trey's mom had banned from the library. They weren't library books. They were our books, and nobody but my parents could tell me what books I could and could not read. Mrs. Jones had said so, which gave me an idea. The big idea. Like the main character in a book, I was finally going to do something. I was going to read every book Miss Spencer and her friends had banned from the school library. I found the list in the newspaper in the library, just like Danny said. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, by Judy Blume. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, by Alan Schwartz. Matilda, by Roald Dahl. Harriet the Sprat, by Louis Fitzhugh. Wait Till Helen Comes, by Mara Downing Hahn. It's Perfectly Normal, by Robbie H. Harris. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller, by E. L. Kongsberry. All the Junie B. Jones books, by Barbara Park. All the Captain Underpants books, by Dave Plicky. The Egypt Game, by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. And all the Goosebumps books, by R.L. Stein. It wasn't exactly 11 books like Mrs. Spencer had said. It was way more than 11 books when you counted all the gajillion Goosebumps books and the big shelf of Captain Underpants and Junie B. Jones books. I had already read 5 of those books on the list, if you count reading a couple of Goosebumps and a couple of Junie B. Jones. The others I read were Matilda, awesome. Harriet the Spy, awesome. And From the Mixed Up Files, super awesome, of course. I've never heard of It's Perfectly Normal or the Egypt Game, but the Egypt Game sounded especially good. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and Wait Till Helen Comes I had seen on the shelf, but I never checked them out because they look scary, and I'm not a big fan of scary books, but I was definitely going to read Wait Till Helen Comes now. I hadn't read Captain Underpants either, and I didn't want to. Captain Underpants was stupid. I would read that one last. The only book I was worried about was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I knew that book, of course. It was on the shelf right beside Judy Blume's other books, like Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, awesome, and Super Fudge, awesome. Shelbourne Elementary goes up through 6th grade, so some of the books in the library are for older kids. Are You There, God? Had a cover that said 6th grade to me, and I heard older girls whispering about it in the school bathroom, so I'd always stayed away from it. But I was resolved. I was going to read each and every one of those books Miss Spencer and I said I couldn't, just to spite her. I knew she'd never know, and that it was like I was doing something that would help Mrs. Jones get the books back on the shelves, but I still felt a secret thrill at doing something that the adults told me not to do. That afternoon, I emptied my piggy bank out, not breaking it like Jamie did from the Mixed Up Files, and counted it up. $21.76. That was enough for 2 paperbacks at least. I asked Mom and Dad if we could go to the bookstore that night, and their reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Are you sure that's what you want to spend your money on? Dad asked. Why do parents always say that when you tell them you want to buy something with your own money? I knew what they really meant. He meant, I don't think that's how you should spend your money. Yes, That is what I want to spend my money on, I thought, and this time I actually said it. Mom and Dad had one of those silent conversations with their eyes again, and Dad sighed and said he'd run me to the bookstore after dinner. I need new shoes at the ballet store, Alexis said. Angelina hopped up and down. I want to go for frozen yogurt. I need to hit the office store, Mom said. If we leave now, we'd have time to grab tacos and do all four. Suddenly, my trip to the bookstore had become a family outing. Before I could even think something I wasn't going to say, Dad was fishing his keys out of the bowl by the door, and the dogs were barking and whining about us leaving. Alexis, Angelina, and I climbed into the back of our car. Angelina's car seat was in the middle. I squeezed into one of the other sides, pushing toys and Cheerios onto the floor. The whole car still reeked of spoiled milk from the drink Angelina had spilled a month ago, and before we had even left the neighborhood, Thing 1 and Thing 2 were whining. The sun is on me, Alexis said. I'm hot. You can sit on the other side when we leave the office store, Dad told her, which meant I was going to have to sit on the hot side in the sun. But no one cared about that. Amy Ann is touching me, Angelina whined. Mom, Amy Ann is touching me. Amy Ann, please don't touch your sister, Mom said. Her car seat takes up half the back seat. How am I not supposed to touch her? Amy Ann, Mom said. I crossed my arms and slouched against the car door, trying to get as far away from Princess Angelina and her throne as possible. Now, do you see why I never say anything? Nobody ever listens to me anyways. We're not going to be at the bookstore too long, are we? Alexis said. Not too long, no, Dad said. Not if we want to get all the other things done and be home before bedtime. Going to the bookstore was the whole reason we were going out in the first place, and now it was something we had to squeeze in so there'd be time for frozen yogurt. I closed my eyes and breathed deep. It didn't matter. I had enough money in my pocket for 2 paperbacks at least, and I already knew which ones I was going to buy. Danny was going to loan me Wait Till Helen Comes, so I was going to buy the Egypt Game and It's Perfectly Normal, whatever that was. I was going to read them both that very night. Not a novel. So it turns out It's Perfectly Normal is not a novel. It's a nonfiction book all about sex, as Mrs. Spencer would say, with pictures. All right, so that's where we're going to stop for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Tune in next time.